want to show a video here really quickly.
Yes.
This is Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto in Canada. And I would argue that, at least as of this recording, he is probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, secular thinker of our times. I mean, the man foretold what we're currently living through as far as the what they call the culture wars. He foretold this 5 years ago. People said he's crazy, he's a fanatic. And it turned out to actually be worse than he predicted. And so he did a series. He did two main series. One is he taught a course based on a book he wrote called Maps of Meaning. And then he did a series teaching the Bible. And he's actually worse than us. I don't think he got out of, after 10 hours or so, he didn't get out of didn't get much past the story of the flood. Boy, you think that we're verbose. Anyway, but he really is a brilliant man.
Yes.
But he's not a biblical scholar, and he doesn't claim to be. He explains he went to Bible Hub, and he poked around at different commentaries. Yeah. And if we're really honest, what he was doing is he had certain ideas he brought with him from psychology, and he was looking for places in the Bible to support those ideas.
Oh.
And so he has a certain idea in psychology which fits perfectly with the standard Christian explanation of blessed are the meek, which I'm not saying it's not correct, but first let's hear what it is. Here is Dr. Jordan Peterson speaking on Joe Rogan.
The line, the meek shall inherit the earth, meek is not a good translation, or the word has moved in the 300 years or so since it was translated. What it means is this: those who have swords and know how to use them, but keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that's another thing I've been telling. Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot different, man. That's a big difference. It's so great. And so, one of the things I tell young men, well, and young women as well, but the young men really need to hear this more, I think, is that you should be a monster. Because everyone says, well, you should be harmless, virtuous. You shouldn't do anyone any harm. You should sheath your competitive instinct. You shouldn't try to win. You don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. You want to take a back seat and all of that. It's like, no. Wrong. You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
Wow. So I think what you were saying, though, is that what he presented isn't really different from what you were taught in seminary.
Oh, no,
right?
100%.
It's essentially the same idea.
He just says it a whole lot better.
He says it far more eloquently, and he uses the metaphor of the sword, which is sheathed, and he does something even more than that, which is powerful if it's true, but it's not. It's powerful if it were true. It'd be really powerful, which is that the actual meaning of the word meek in the original, right? And he says 300 years. He's talking about the King James.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know what to say. It's kind of cute that he's going to the King James.
Right.
I mean, coming from your seminary background, you don't go to the King James, you go to the Greek.
Absolutely.
And in this case, we can go to the Hebrew. But even if you go to the Greek, and I contacted my Greek expert who I talked to, Dr. Pavlos Vassiliadis, who is one of the top experts in the world in the New Testament in Greek. He is a native Greek speaker. He went to a university in Thessalonica, right? I mean, it's pretty, how could you get more than that, right?
Yeah.
And it's where the epistle to the Thessalonians, right? I mean, he lives there, he grew up there, and I asked him, I said, I don't want your opinion. I want to know, based on the meaning of ancient Greek, is this the meaning of the word? Does the word praes, does that word in Greek, does that mean to sheath a sword and to have a sword and sheath it and not use it? He said, no, that's nothing to do with the meaning whatsoever.
Stop.
And I looked for myself in all the dictionaries I could find just to verify what he was saying, and he sent me other resources I didn't have for ancient Greek, and none of them said anything of the sort. That's if you looked in any other text in the world, right? Because Greek's a language, right? If you looked in Aristotle or Plato or Homer or any, whatever those Greek texts are, you would never find, according to my Greek expert, that this word praes means to sheath your sword. Well, so what Jordan Peterson shares there is, I think it's a profound truth.
Right.
It has nothing to do with Matthew 5:5 or with the flood.
Exactly.
And it's this truth that if you can't defend yourself in this world, we live in this world where we have some of the most privileged people on the planet who complain that they're victims. People who've never been out of the United States and seen how over 1 billion people live in the world without electricity, without plumbing, without toilets, without indoor toilets, some of them without toilets at all. Like all they do is go out into the field, imagine that, and then you're, and not to say people don't suffer. There's people suffering all over the world, but to not recognize that if you're on unemployment and you can afford a car and a flat screen TV, you're one of the privileged people in the world. That's just how it's the truth. So here's a profound account I found, and I want to say that, and this is to show that what Jordan Peterson says is true. What convinced me that what he said is true was the Yazidi genocide in 2015. ISIS came, the Islamic State came, and they captured northern Iraq and northern Syria, and they murdered hundreds of thousands of people, most of them Christians, but also Muslims. There are accounts that are just horrific, I can't even share, where they would go into a village and they just murder everybody. For what? Because they were Christians and refused to convert to Islam. And at least in some cases, they gave people a choice, and others they didn't. So I want to read to you an account that appears in a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And it essentially illustrates the difference between a pacifist and someone who chooses to be peaceful but has the ability for violence. And I've had this argument with a friend of mine who's a pacifist. And my argument is total pacifism is evil. That if you're not willing to defend yourself in certain situations against people who will not respond to pacifism, then that, and look, this is something that Gandhi had said. Gandhi was a pacifist. He said the Jews should have just passively not resisted Hitler. That's okay when you're dealing with the British. When you're dealing with the Nazis, that doesn't work. So this is an account about these two groups of people. One of them were in New Zealand. They're called the Maori. And the other was in a place 5 miles east of New Zealand called the Chatham Islands. And they're called the Moriori. And they're actually genetically the same group of people. A bunch of Maori got on a boat and ended up in the Chatham Islands and settled there. And the people in New Zealand forgot they existed. Now, the New Zealanders were a warlike people. They had a very small, pretty big islands actually, but they were crammed into these islands. There was nowhere to go. And what would they do if they ran, they needed more space to just kill their neighbors. And the Moriori were on a tiny island, a very small island, and they made a decision early on they would live peacefully with each other. And if there were any conflicts, they would work it out with peaceful resolutions. So let me read this to you. It says, with no other, it's talking about the Chatham Islands, 500 miles east of New Zealand. With no other accessible islands, the Moriori had to learn how to get along with each other. They did so by renouncing war. That's so beautiful. The result was a small, unwarlike population with simple technology and weapons. In 1835, an Australian seal hunting ship brought the news to New Zealand of islands where the inhabitants are very numerous, but they do not understand how to fight and have no weapons. That news was enough to induce 900 Maori to sail to the Chatham Islands. On November 19th, 1835, a ship carrying 500 Maori armed with guns, clubs, and axes arrived. Groups of Maori began to walk through Moriori settlements, announcing that the Moriori were now their slaves and killing those who objected. An organized resistance by the Moriori could still have defeated the Maori, who were outnumbered 2-1. However, the Moriori had a tradition of resolving disputes peacefully. They decided in a council meeting not to fight back, but to offer peace, friendship, and a division of resources. Over the course of the next few days, the Maori killed hundreds of Moriori, cooked and ate many of the bodies, and enslaved all the others. A Maori conqueror explained, "We took possession in accordance with our customs, and we caught all the people. Not one escaped. Some ran away from us, some we killed, and others we killed. But what of it? It was in accordance with our customs." So it's fine to be a pacifist when you're an Indian in India, when you're, Gandhi, dealing with the British. Or let's say in the case of the civil rights movement, when you're Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he's dealing with vicious, violent people, but it's on television. And the people on television seeing it, at some point they're going to say, no, this can't go on. What the Nazis did wasn't on television. If you tried to resist peacefully, they don't care, they're just going to kill you. Right? You just made their job easier. They could care less. And they didn't put it on television. They kept it a secret up until very late, until after the war, essentially. So we actually have very few videos of the Nazis doing what they did, and that's because it was illegal to take videos or photos. So we have a 15-second clip from, I think it's Latvia, where a soldier was on his vacation and he happened to get a little clip of Jews being murdered. Right? But it's very rare because they didn't want to advertise. because if there are good people who will see that and say, well, this is intolerable, we can't allow this. So all of this is to say that what Dr. Jordan Peterson said is correct. You shouldn't be a pacifist to the point where you can't defend yourself. And therefore to be meek doesn't mean to be weak. I actually agree with that part. It's a beautiful idea Peterson presents, but has nothing to do with the actual linguistics or grammar of the Greek word praes. So, all right, let's get back to the Greek. Look, so the word in Greek there is praes, and here's what I do. I always look and see, first I'll look at the Greek dictionaries for sure. But what's more important in the Greek dictionary is to see what word in Hebrew that word translated in the Septuagint, which is the ancient Greek translation of the Tanakh. And the word that translated is anav. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where.
So one of the places that this appears very clearly is where it's talking about. Let's see. It's talking about Moses, and it says here it is. Numbers 12:3. Va'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama. And the man Moshe was very anav. He was very meek, more than any man who was on the face of the earth. And the word there in Greek is the same word, praes, and it translates as humble, both in Hebrew and Greek. Right? So meek, he's right. It's not a word we even use anymore in English. The word in modern English is humble. Humble has nothing to do with I sheathe my sword. Humble has nothing to do with what he's described. In other words, he takes meek in the sense of I choose not to act in violence even though I could, right? And maybe that's true about the word meek. It's not true about the word humble. Humble is I realize, wow, and here's part of it, right? Because humble could be, well, I'm just a very simple person. There's people who are greater than me. No, humble is to realize something great in yourself and still realize, wow, there are people who are smarter than me. There's people who are better than me. And even if I'm the smartest person in the world, I'm Albert Einstein, God is above me. So that's what humility is. Humility is to realize that in the eyes of God, we're all human beings, and He's greater than all of us. That's what humility is. What's the opposite of humility is pride. What's the picture of pride in the Tanakh? The king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, conquers the known world, and he walks around his empire, and he looks around, and he says, I did all of this with my own might.
I'm it.
Boy, I am it.
Yeah.
I did all of this with my own might.
Yes.
God didn't do this for me. No man did this for me. Nobody other power did. This was all me. Instead of recognizing, wow, I had a lot of loyal people under me who helped me do this. And it was only through the grace of God that this was given to me. That would have been humility. He says, I did this all by myself. That's pride. It's the opposite of humility.